Okay, and we are live and back by popular demand. So, we today are going to focus on feedback that hits different, a manager's guide to keeping it real. And my co host, Dr. Anita, keeps it realer than anybody that I know. So, I'm just really excited to be able to do this one more time. And we're now streaming live on YouTube. So, excited for anybody who gets to see it and join us live. So let me go ahead and kick us off on this Thursday that quite frankly feels like a Friday. So
Yes, it
a little
does.
bit, doesn't it, Dr. Anita?
It
It
does.
sure does. So a little bit about management cues. So we're a unique training company. We emphasize tracking performance, getting in the weeds with the manager's experience, and so we are unique in that way that we capitalize on what people are actually going through in the training experience, unlike any other company out there. And so we're providing a unique lens to what's actually happening in the workforce, but not just what's happening in the workforce, what it's like to actually have training that's proven to work and activates change, right? So for our clients, that means a very clear line on return on investment. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and get to it today. And I have the honor and pleasure and just the most heartfelt feelings around introducing Dr. Anita Polite-Wilson, who is actively partnering with Management Cues as our inclusive leadership and culture expert. And so I'll let her kind of fill in the blanks there around her experience and her contribution. Go ahead, Dr. Anita.
Dr. Myra, thank you so much for once again being so gracious and inviting me to share your platform with you and all your audience. Hello, community. I am Dr. Anita Polite-Wilson. I am the founder and CEO of Dr. Anita Enterprises, where I serve my clients as an elite team strategist, typically working with the C-suite. Therefore, I'm a C-suite trusted advisor, and I am a board director, preparing organizations to strategically navigate culture, complexity, and change. And what I bring to the partnership with Management Cues is a focus on what I am calling AI leadership, which is authentic, intentional leadership. We are now in an environment where we have to be mindful of our words, and that's something that I'm always talking with my clients about. As a matter of fact, this morning I just finished a 3-day series with my client talking about language and culture and how we need to be mindful of the organizational system of systems and how different perspectives in the organization always need to be taken into consideration. So, to Myra's work, Dr. Myra's work at Management Cues and her focus on middle manager, that is the toughest position anyone can have because you are navigating the messages from your executives through and cascading to the messages to the people on the front lines, and sometimes in the middle, you've got the hardest role. So, Dr. Myra, on behalf of everyone who's in middle management, thank you for seeing us and hearing us and understanding that we have a unique challenge that we need Management Cues to help us solve.
Oh, absolutely. And it is my privilege and honor and pleasure to represent in that space. Working with managers is something that I for sure absolutely adore, and I understand the struggle. All right. So today we're going to get in and focus in our conversation on a very powerful opportunity when it comes to engaging with others, and that's providing constructive feedback. And there's a distinction that I like to make with managers and in training, and that is that there's a difference between just providing feedback and being effective while doing it, right? And so that's what we're going to capitalize on, and then we're going to add a layer of science, as we like to do, and a little layer of magic that Dr. Anita always brings to the table. So we'll talk about constructive feedback. We'll actually provide you with the diagnostic today. So if you happen to be on live with us, you can actually take it and get a real feel for what your constructive feedback muscle actually looks like. So great takeaway for you there. And then we'll talk about what's common, what's experienced, and what it looks like to kind of set the stage. And then we'll talk about psychological safety, framing, and then the science. Okay, so let's get into it. I swear today feels like Friday to me still. Here we go. All right. So, quick introduction. I always like to start with fundamentals. I feel that that's really important and sets the baseline for not just managers, but people in general. So, constructive feedback is a powerful tool for learning. So how we look at constructive feedback, I think, is where that mindset shift takes place and where it becomes powerful. It's for learning, it's for growth, it's for performance improvement. So as managers, it should be uniquely tied into your performance management. From a neuroscience perspective, how feedback is delivered and received has a direct impact on brain function, motivation, and behavior. And so from that standpoint, it plays a particular role. And give me a second, folks. I have here a pop-up, so let me just take care of that. Okay. It has an impact on behavior. So effective management really hinges on the ability to provide feedback that fosters growth, enhances performance, and strengthens workplace relationships. Anything to add to that, Dr. Anita?
Yes, Dr. Meyer, I have a couple of notes. First of all, when we talk about feedback, we need to always remember that language matters. Our language and our actions and the way they land on people is a huge part of communication. The second thing is we need to be careful in delivering a message that can be received versus a message that we feel is right when we're delivering feedback. Regardless of how right you are in the feedback you're delivering, are you delivering it in language that can be received by someone? And then finally, we need to remember that when feedback is delivered to us, sometimes it may go against how we perceive ourselves, and anything that we see is different is seen as a threat. So, delivery and the reception of feedback is a very serious two-way communication street that managers really need to understand well.
Agreed. Agreed. Completely agreed. And so for starters, we're going to give you an opportunity, a few seconds, maybe 30 seconds, to scan this QR code and actually take a diagnostic that I have designed and created to assess your constructive feedback skill muscle. So I'll give you those 30 seconds. And while they're taking that, Dr. Anita, you took this diagnostic to do some testing. If you want to share just some feelings or thoughts around it, I think it would help our audience as we give them some time.
So, real talk, when I took this diagnostic, I took it from the perspective of giving and receiving feedback with my husband. Needless to say, that was not the correct frame of mind because I think I did a little less better than I would assume that I would have done. But here's the thing, when we're really comfortable with people, we tend not to maybe focus so much on selective language and making sure that the language that we use delivers the message that we want and not necessarily focuses on the rightness and in how we're showing up in that moment. So when you're thinking about feedback, delivering or receiving, always be mindful of your own triggers. And it's okay to pause and say, you know what? I'm not sure how I'm feeling about what you're saying to me. Let me process this. And can we have a different conversation in an hour or so, or maybe in a week? So I think that's important to know that the process of delivering and receiving feedback, be aware of your own triggers, whether you're delivering or receiving. And if you're not feeling quite right, if it's keeping you from having the positive, constructive conversation that Dr. Myra is talking about, it's okay to pause and give yourself a break and say, let's come back at a different time.
Absolutely. This is definitely a learning curve and it's something you continuously work on, right? So by no means is this the goal of being perfect, because that is just an unrealistic goal. But here's what your results may possibly mean to you. So if you got between a 0 to 49%, there's intervention required. And what that means is you should be shadowing somebody. You should be working with somebody who has experience around doing this effectively so that you can improve on your delivery of constructive feedback. And so one thing that I do as a manager when I have managers or leaders reporting to me directly is I actually sit in there with them. I also have them watch me do it. And obviously keeping confidential concerns in line and intact and appropriate, I think it's important for us to see somebody do it. I think it's important for us to have support while we're doing it. And that has proven to be really effective for managers in the field. If you got between a 50 and a 60, there's a required additional training, which means there could be an absence of technical skill, and you just need to polish those things. You just need to fill that gap, right? If you're between 61 and 70%, there's additional guidance. So you're almost there, but there's something that's not quite hitting right. And you need to know what that is. And so you need to partner with somebody on that. And then if you're between 71 and 80%, you're on track to being extremely effective. If you're between 81 and 100, you've done it. You're very effective with constructive feedback and you're able to actually use it to impact the environment. Okay, so moving on. Common pitfalls in management when it comes to constructive feedback. So, as managers, sometimes we feel alone. Sometimes we feel like we're failing. Sometimes we feel like leadership doesn't see us or understand us. I know I've been there. I know I've witnessed it. I've discussed it with now hundreds of managers, if not more. But here's what happens, right? These are common areas where we fall short. Being too vague, focusing only on the negative, delaying feedback, using harsh or blunt tones, lacking actionable solutions, ignoring emotional impact, overloading with too much at one time, making your feedback one-sided, not following up, and ignoring individual differences. When we provide feedback and it's too generic, it's no longer constructive. So it's important for us to know that there is an art to this. No, it's not easy. Anything on that point, Dr. Anita?
I would just say that I appreciate the fact that you use constructive feedback and not constructive criticism. I was on site with a client today. I heard someone say criticism. I said, let's pause. Let's remember language. Constructive criticism is an oxymoron. Constructive is building up. Criticism is tearing down. Feedback is neutral. So thank you, Dr. Mayra. Constructive feedback.
Yeah, and for those out there, as a manager, I actually use constructive criticism quite often, and it wasn't. I would say to maybe the past 5 years where I really started to shift the use of it, because Dr. Anita is right, and the use of the word criticism does activate something in the brain. So just being completely transparent, I used it often because that's what was used in the field. And so it took me a minute to change that. And I'm still working on other phrases that I use that my expert colleagues around me at Management Cues so kindly, constructively point out actually have a negative impact. And so things for us to work on, but we all have those areas. So thank you, Dr. Anita.
Absolutely.
And setting the stage. So I've never seen anybody set the stage quite like Dr. Anita. So I'm taking some lessons from her in that regard. So let me just give it over to her to kind of talk about setting the stage.
Thank you, Dr. Myra. One of the things that you want to think about when you're delivering constructive feedback, and Dr. Myra had mentioned in particular, not overloading. A really simple practice is help someone with what it is that they're working on. Let's say presentation skills. They deliver a presentation, they want you to give them some feedback. You could always jump in and say, well, I think you need to fix X, Y, and Z. But a more appropriate way to do it is to allow people to own their situation so they can own their solution and own their success. So to own their situation, ask them, well, how do you think you did? And then let's say you've got 5 points that you wanted to bring to their attention, but they mentioned three of those points. Is it really necessary to mention the other two, depending on how dire they are to the situation? Let them learn and lean into that and understand that their own solution would be, all right, since these are the three things you've decided you might want to work on, who does these three things well that you could watch? Again, you're not telling them what to do, you're helping them come up with their own solutions. And the next time they make that presentation and they nail all three of those things, now they can own their own success. Dr. Myra, is that the kind of feedback you're looking for? You're on mute, Dr. Myra.
So yes, I was saying, yes, absolutely. So setting the stage, right? So that helps us. That helps us. Can I hold on 1 second? We have an issue taking place. Give us a second here.
Well, Dr. Myra, while you're addressing that, let's also think about this. If you are planning to deliver feedback to someone and you want to make sure that it goes well, one thing that I recommend you do is role playing in triads. So, for instance, you would take the role of the person delivering the feedback that you really need to deliver. You would have someone else taking the role of someone receiving the feedback, and then you would have a third observer. And the whole point of the observer is number one, to allow you to receive feedback on how you delivered it. Number two, to allow someone to give feedback on how it landed on them. And number three, for the observer to give you some insights into the dynamics that took place between you as the role player of the delivery of the feedback and between the person of the role player who's receiving the feedback. That gives you an opportunity to practice language that is more palatable, that again will allow you to deliver a message that can be received versus a message that you think is right in terms of delivering what you think people need to know. What do you think, Dr. Mayra?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think part of understanding these components, right, is the importance of setting people up to succeed. And doing that means that you're considering their state before they walk in and they partner with you, right? So I think that it's important to acknowledge that there's more going on than us just delivering a message, right? And that's really what encompasses psychological safety. So moving on, the reason why it's important to create these types of environments is because you want to reduce the fear of judgment. You want to encourage open dialogue. You want to increase learning and adaptability, and you want to build trust and stronger relationships. So there's a higher impact and objective component there. Dr. Anita, any feedback there on the overall impact of what this means?
I think psychological safety is something that we need to go into every conversation with, but most especially constructive feedback. Psychological safety impacts us in 5 different ways: how secure we feel, the level of autonomy that we have in terms of our thoughts and actions, fairness for ourselves and others, the trust level that we can establish with each other's, and esteem. And so when you take all of these things into consideration, giving and receiving constructive feedback can hit someone's esteem factor if it's not delivered in a way that's effective and thoughtful.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there are steps, right? So for me, steps are critical because as an operations leader, protocol and go-to steps are what make things active, easy to activate is what I'm trying to say. For managers and for leaders who maybe don't feel so confident around these areas. So one, set the right tone and intent. Two, choose the right setting. Three, build trust and acknowledge efforts. Four, be clear, specific, and solution oriented. Five, encourage dialogue and collaboration. And six, regulate emotional reactions and stay calm. Any additional steps there that you can think of, Dr. Anita, that would help in this process?
Really want to focus on number 6, especially considering what just happened. The importance of regulating emotion and reactions and staying calm is critical. I think perhaps had we not already experienced something like this similarly, Dr. Myra, I would be triggered by now by one of those comments that we just saw on the screen. But because I'm accustomed to doing these types of things live, because I cannot control anyone else's feelings, I can only control my own. And because I know who I am in this space, I can honestly say that I am not having a problem regulating my emotions and my reactions to what just took place.
Thank you, Dr. Anita. Yeah, so I don't know what it is with this particular topic or this particular segment between us that promotes or activates feelings in others, but here we go, right? Here we are
There we
navigating
go.
through it. And perfect segue for positive framing. Our brains are wired in a very significant and specific way. So, acknowledging strengths first to activate the brain's reward system is part of understanding that when we speak, when we engage with others, we are setting a path that's taking place in people's mind. So this increases receptiveness to the constructive feedback. So look at it like opening a door, right? How we set the stage opens that door. Dr. Anita, did you want to take it away with how to positively frame it?
Well, we always want to start with something that highlights someone's strengths. We want to start from a place of positivity before we go into a place of opportunity to grow. And here's why. When we can focus on someone's strengths, it's much easier to say, because you're strong here, how can you leverage that strength to close the gap and be successful here? In my opinion, that's what usually typically works the best.
I was taking notes as you were speaking. So, yes, I agree. I absolutely agree. So, Acknowledging improvements or efforts made, even if they're small, that activates the brain. Reinforcing a sense of accomplishment and boosting confidence. Using words that encourage ownership, such as opportunity, potential, ability, and capability. Empower employees to take initiative in their own development. Sometimes, believe it or not, our employees are in a rut and they have come to the conclusion that maybe they're not worthy of improvement. Maybe they're not worthy of growth. And managers are just in a very privileged position to activate and turn that around. So, framing feedback as a team effort when the manager and employee work together toward a solution make all the difference. So, end on a positive note, reaffirm your confidence in them and what they can do in the areas of opportunity.
I think a key word that you mentioned, Dr. Mayra, is partnership. We always want to let our folks know that we are partnering with them towards their success.
Oh, 100%. I think you have to say it, right? You have to be very clear that that's important to you. And so sometimes we forget because we sometimes think as managers and leaders, oh, they already know, right? And sometimes we do this with friends and family members. And the reality is that saying it is what activates it in the brain, not assuming that they know, right? So that's the takeaway there. So being clear, refer to facts, refer to behavior-based observations, minimize ambiguity, avoid generalizations, do not make assumptions, and do not make personal judgment. Make it about the performance and the outcomes, and have that be your focus. So, Dr. Anita and I love this topic, which is the engagement of the prefrontal cortex. So let me know if you want to touch on this before I do.
I would like to jump in here. So the prefrontal cortex is what causes us to stop and think and reflect. It's the amygdala that causes us to kind of run on autopilot, so to speak. So when we're talking about threats, when we're talking about threats to our psychological safety, when we're talking about threats to our esteem, anything that doesn't align with the way we perceive ourselves in positive ways, our amygdala, the fast brain, is going to automatically see that as a threat. But when we stop and begin to operate from the prefrontal cortex, we can say, well, hold on. This feedback, number one, is being delivered by someone who I'm going to assume best intent that they care for me. And if they weren't to tell me this, I couldn't possibly improve it so that I can have better interpersonal dynamics with other people. So when we allow ourselves to stop and analyze the feedback and take it for what it's worth and apply what we can, that's how the engagement of the prefrontal cortex really helps us to be the people that we want to be.
Absolutely. And again, it's wired, right? It's part of how we operate. So that takes us to the growth mindset. So neuroscience shows that shifting from a fixed to growth oriented thinking fosters learning. So there has to be an openness about our experiences for us to welcome learning in. So framing feedback is that opportunity for growth. It normalizes learning versus punishment, which is sometimes what happens when we provide feedback and it's not done appropriately. It models growth for yourself, right? How you respond to something that's an opportunity or a challenge, that is part of setting that track, right? And then, of course, following up. And if something's important to you, you follow up on it, right? And that's the message that we give people. When we fail to reinforce or follow up, we're actually producing the opposite type of messaging, that it's not important, that you didn't mean it, and that it wasn't significant enough for you to follow up on. So being timely. So as an operations advocate, right? Being timely, protocol, structure, compliance, all of those things are something that I love to play with. But the brain has something to do with that too. The brain processes information more effectively when feedback is immediate. Managers offer feedback in the moment or shortly after something has been completed or you've noticed something. The feedback needs to be specific, focused, and has to be recent. They have to be able to recollect their thoughts and recall what just happened for it to actually be a learning opportunity. So managers that provide feedback regularly and do it in this way um, are able to actually shift behavior, right? Versus just waiting for opportune moments like a performance review to call out the things that have gone wrong. So, a timely feedback conversation is often collaborative. It involves the employee in the discussion about what is working well, what needs to be improved, and how they can actually move forward. Anything on the timely component, Dr. Anita?
Sure that you mentioned it, but if you do, I want to repeat it. Bullet number 4, timely feedback isn't just about correcting mistakes. It also includes reinforcing positive behaviors or outcomes. We always want to give feedback on what we want to see more of. And Dr. Mayra, if you did say it, it was worth repeating.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree with you. And regulating emotional responses. Look, things happen. As managers, we're exposed to anything and everything. As leaders, we have a responsibility to step up, right? And we see that in daily exchanges. Lord knows, Dr. Anita and I have come across it in many different ways. But here's the important thing: pause before reacting. Take a deep breath before responding to avoid knee jerk reactions. Maintain body language. Keep arms relaxed. Maintain eye contact and nod to show attentiveness. Show that you care about the discussion taking place. Regulate your tone. Keep your voice calm and steady, avoiding defensive and dismissive tones. Anything else there, Dr. Anita?
You've covered it all.
We've covered it and we've done it and we continue to do it. Actionable solutions. So part of being effective is having the go-to solution, right? Having an idea of what to step into, even if you don't have all the answers. So the brain is wired to seek solutions rather than dwell on problems. Provide clear steps from improvement after the feedback has been provided. Do not focus on only pointing out issues, right? Don't make that exchange just about that. Balance it out. Put management controls in place, like setting a date, a timeline, a follow up meeting to follow up on outcomes, right? Set that track so that it shows and demonstrates the value of what you're doing. And then encouragement and support. Empower employees to take ownership of their growth. Equip your team with training opportunities. Training is so important. It reinforces and realigns. So if you're not taking time for training and development, you're setting the stage for them to think that the growth isn't worth it. It's not, it doesn't matter, and it's not impactful, so they won't spend their time there. Provide accessible support resources that align with the feedback being given. Make sure that it all makes sense, right? If you say you need to improve your communication, well, there should be training around that. There should be a plan around that. Otherwise, you're only criticizing, right? And so that's the message that you're sending. Be available to guide and support their development. Anything there under encouragement and support, Dr. Anita?
Just the development is an ongoing process. It requires lifelong learning of self and others, and the continuous support is so necessary. It's a critical component.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that we forget that, right? That it should be programming that we're creating, not one off instances to correct a problem that really has a more significant root cause. And so, as managers, we're the gatekeepers. So, with that said, we've come all the way to our key takeaways. We have made it. So, constructive feedback rewires the brain. Having a growth mindset is not just saying you have a growth mindset. It means actually doing something that nurtures growth. Managers should be intentional about developing their constructive feedback skills, and managers should be prepared for what needs to happen after constructive feedback is provided. If you're not in tune with a plan of how to reinforce and follow up or follow through that feedback, that power, you've lost it, right? The importance has gone out the door. So it's really important to know that there's continuity to constructive feedback. That's what makes it effective. And before I close this completely out, any key takeaways or gold nuggets from you, Dr. Anita?
The one thing I'm thinking about is the fact that generally speaking, advertising research has borne out that people need to hear a message 7 to 13 times. So whether you're helping someone to close an opportunity gap, or whether you want to reinforce behavior that you want to see more of, say it often. Say it with a smile. Say it with support. Say it with authenticity and intentionality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So I know we have a very small audience and we have people watching on YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and bypass the Q&A. But if you want to email us any questions, please feel free to do so. And with that said, as we close out, Management Q's offers a host of training opportunities and very accessible, affordable training tools like our key and milestone product, the Management Planner, which guides managers through the management and leadership functions. You also have access to our neuroscience studies on our website at www.managementqs.org. And you're always absolutely welcome to schedule a free consultation with us if you're curious or have some questions. And last but certainly not least, we are currently crowdfunding for our next milestone, and to hit that next milestone with our scientifically proven business model with I Fund Women by Honeycomb Credit, who is supporting Latina entrepreneurs and women make it out there with their phenomenal ideas and concepts. So if you're curious about them, please feel free to check them out. They are incredible. And with that said, thank you so much for joining. We hope that you've enjoyed this brief session and have some key takeaways to take alongside. Thank you so much. Till next time.